Yes. So it's really hard. Either you need them to switch over because I want to go on followers. You know, this sort of smaller. Vegas is like just pack it on.
All right. Good morning. I know. I had a hard time in my last class. It's gonna be even harder now, right? I hate the last day. I'm so sentimental. Like I hate saying goodbye. And then we had all of our softball teams ended over the weekend. So like all those ended, all these are ending. It's like too many ends at one point. And then my kids, like one of them is almost done with elementary school, which is just like, I can't even fathom that my oldest is gonna be in middle school. That's terrifying, right? But it's huge, right? I can't even believe it. So lots of ends this week, but I don't know about you. I am excited about summer, right? Like I'm sad our class is over, but summer is exciting. So I'm holding on to that. I wrote this up here. I'll talk about it more at the very end, but just a couple of reminders, and then I'll go over those at the end when hopefully we have everybody who's going to be here. So last time, right, we talked about pornography and we watched part of the documentary. I have about 20 more minutes to show you, but I want to talk about this for just a moment because they go over this in the film. And this is probably the biggest point when it comes to issues with pornography is the stuff around obscenity, right? And again, they mentioned this last time in the documentary. They'll talk about it a little bit more in the closing part today. And they'll show you a case that like really controversial that kind of pushed the boundaries of obscenity. But obscenity is this term that has been an issue in pornography for as long as pornography has been around. And several of the big kingpins like Larry Flint and so on have gone to jail for violating obscenity in their films or in their things that they're putting out there. And there's 3 levels for like obscenity, right? And so it has to have a prurient interest in sex, which means like a very lustful interest in sex. It's offensive to contemporary standards. And this is where it gets tricky, like they were talking about in the documentary. How do you define community now? Right? Because if things are on the internet, then the internet becomes the community. How do we decide if that's offensive to everybody? And typically they gather like panels of people to decide this, but what's offensive to me might not be offensive to you, right? And so this is something that's very difficult to decide. There's a whole list, and they talk about this in the documentary, of things that tend to be considered controversial, right? And they're typically things that you would expect. Right, any kind of like animal abuse or murder or like extreme violence, things like fisting are also not considered to be okay in terms of obscenity. And then it must be without any kind of serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So we're not just talking about pornography here because you're like, why would it have any of those things? But any piece of work that we're talking about obscenity with has to meet these 3 things. And there's a lot of court cases that happen where people are kind of trying to defend the work that they put out there to decide if it needs to be pulled or not, right? So this is a huge problem in the pornography industry, right? Trying to decide what is acceptable and what isn't, right? And the things that aren't acceptable, the people who produce it can go to jail or be fined, or at the very least just have to remove the product from the shelves. So I wanted to go over that just for a second here. And then again, I'll show you the last like 20 minutes that we have left of the documentary. And they go over a little bit more of that obscenity stuff and then just show you a case.
React in ways that like that it's right, like that like
Sure.
it's actually happening.
Mhm.
You know, like for example, The Shining, that was horrible for Shelley Duvall.
Mhm.
It was very, very psychologically harming
Yeah.
because she was treated horribly. And even though, you know, she might not have known she was acting,
Yeah.
after being in those conditions for so long, the brain reacts and it's real.
Yeah, just
So-
because you consent to something doesn't mean that it doesn't have a long-term impact.
Right. So like that girl that she like when she was doing that to her friend, oh my God.
I was a friend of mine saying like, oh, I know her, she'll be all right with this, like, oh.
I'll take her out shopping.
Yeah, I'll take her.
She's grabbing each other.
And her being like, oh, as if a woman tells her to do it, then she will. Like, that's so manipulative and gross.
And there's a lot of that. I mean, a lot of manipulation, a lot of kind of like cringy, gross things within that industry, which is where the stereotypes come from, right? There's a lot of stereotypes of pornography. Some of them are true. and some of them aren't, right? And they can hold up sometimes and not others. It can be helpful. It can be harmful, right? There's a lot of things related to pornography. A lot of people consume it and it's not necessarily harmful in any way. And then you have the ones that are kind of on the outliers, like what they're showing you in the documentary. They're purposefully showing you the ones that are controversial. And I would say, Lizzie Borden's and that whole company are shooting very controversial films, right? And they have gotten into trouble multiple times with the law for the things that they're doing. So a lot of repercussions for them, but they keep doing it anyway. So some positives and negatives of pornography, right? Like anything, it has both. So a lot of people find pornography to be helpful, right? It's helpful for arousal. It can allow them to indulge in fantasies that aren't maybe acceptable, right? It allows them to kind of get some of that, add some of that outlet for things that are socially unacceptable. It can help with masturbation. It can help with differing sex drives of partners. A lot of people use pornography because maybe they have a much higher sex drive than a partner. And they don't want to cheat on them. They don't want to go outside of that, but they need an outlet for it, right? And so there are advantages to pornography. A lot of couples will watch these things together or use them together. But there are some big negatives too. It depicts sex very inaccurately, right? The people who are starring in these films are not the average typical person. Right? Most men aren't like 8 to 10 inches long in terms of penis size, right? We talked about 5 to 6 inches being the norm and the average. The people who are starring in these films are much larger than that. Their sexual responses are very atypical, right? And they're acting, right? They're acting. So it portrays sex very inaccurately. A lot of stereotypes and myths, and people watch these shows and they're like, well, you don't react that way, or that's not what's happening for me. And then they feel poorly about themselves. It can have a lot of consequences in that sense. It can lead to low self-esteem, cause people to doubt the normality of their sexuality. And there's a lot of also kind of rape culture that is perpetrated in these films as well, right? And you saw some of that today, obviously in the documentary, but on a much lesser level, it's often just pushing and pushing and pushing until somebody gives in, right? And that is harmful for that lack of consent, which we talked about last week. So definitely some advantages and disadvantages. Regardless, it is a massive, massive industry, right? And this is something that is probably around to stay, but it's constantly, being looked at in a legal sense, as you saw in the film. Before we move on to the other P, which is prostitution, any other comments here about pornography or about anything from this? Yeah. Right? Like the more that you do anything, the more likely you are to be desensitized to it in some way. Right. And that's the idea with the advertising that we talked about last time, that we have to keep upping the ante, because what used to maybe turn you on or be shocking, you get used to that. And now you have to go another step, right? And that's the case with a lot of things. But it's definitely true with this too. Yeah, was that it?
Do you think that if someone watches really aggressive porn and then someone has really wild their sex life with your dad together because they have different levels of
it could be, right? If you're watching a lot of very aggressive pornography, you're getting your ideas of what's normal from that. And then you try and do those behaviors in a relationship with somebody who doesn't want aggressive behavior. I think that's going to be a problem, right? If your partner likes aggressive behavior, then it's perfect, right? And it's not a problem at all. But it can definitely lead to issues when you're doing the things that you're seeing in these films, which aren't typically normal typical sexual activities for people, right? They can be, but it's definitely not the norm for the average couple. So it could be a problem. Sure. All right. Prostitution. So prostitution is the exchange of sexual services for money. Sex worker is the proper term to use for somebody who is in this profession. This is sometimes called the oldest profession. It's been around for a very, very long time. For as long as we have documented history, we have history of people exchanging sex for goods or services or money. It's been something that has been around for a long, long time, right? And there's a lot of different reasons that somebody might do this. The number one reason is money. Right. A lot of people go into this because they need the money, and it's something that they feel like they can sell or they can do. There isn't a typical sex worker necessarily. It's traditionally women. right? Much more common than men, but men can also be in this profession as well. And what's the stereotype you think of when you think of like a prostitute? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Yeah. Okay, you think of drug addicts? Yeah.
Street.
Yeah. Okay.
People in cars.
Yeah. Streetwalker. Anybody else have a different? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Right. I haven't heard that one before, but I mean, whatever comes to mind, right?
And
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's a whole range. Again, there's no typical person, but the streetwalker stereotype and people who are using drugs or maybe in very like poor circumstances, those are very common stereotypes. A brothel would be a house in which a group of prostitutes work together. This can be something that you're doing in a solitary fashion, or it can be something that you're doing in affiliation with others and you have people managing you. We'll talk about where it's legal and illegal in a minute here. But there's still something that is very much around. It is largely illegal, but that doesn't mean that people don't do it, and don't do it in a much more informal way of just having sex with people in exchange for like dinner or exchange for like something else happening. It's kind of a lesser level of this as well. Yeah.
Just reminds you of the Victorian era where prostitution was so popular. They
Yeah.
had their guides for it.
Right.
Even though, yeah, it was obviously more like undercover, because it was still
Yeah.
not very acceptable.
Uh-huh.
It was very
Right. And if you watch like any of those like older films where they portray it, they're like very common to have like a brothel or like a house full of prostitutes. And yeah.
I heard one of those books.
Yeah.
It was so interesting. And that was like, I want to say majority of these like addresses were brothels filled with
Yeah.
like women
Mhm.
living together.
Yeah, very common in that era.
showing her ankles.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right. Well, interesting. Like there's a lot of this, and it's definitely portrayed a lot in film, especially during that era. You see a lot of it becoming very popularized. Lots of different names for people who are sex workers, right? Again, sex workers, the common name or like the most PC name. But you can have someone who identifies as a call girl. Traditionally, this is someone that you would call and hire, right? That's where the term comes from. It might not be that you call anymore. You can order everything online, right? But right, not from Amazon for this one though, right? You can order almost everything on Amazon. But a call girl, a courtesan was typically someone who deals with like wealthy customers. Just think of Moulin Rouge, right? If you've ever seen that, right? She was a courtesan, someone who deals with like royalty or people who have a lot of money. Streetwalkers would be somebody who was on a street corner, right, as the stereotype and probably the most common portrayal. Escorts are an interesting like gray area, right, where this can or cannot include sex depending on the company. Typically, they don't advertise it as including sex, but that might be something that happens as part of the service. It's like having someone to go out on a date with or to escort you out for a social event, which may or may not include any kind of intimacy. Bondage and discipline prostitutes, hiring people specifically for like BDSM purposes, and might not include any kind of intercourse. It might just be dominating or pain or like punishment. Yeah, like hiring a dominatrix or hiring somebody to do this, which may or may not include sex, right? That's something that has grown in popularity quite a bit over the last like 10 years with like the 50 Shades books and movies. That's definitely picked up in popularity. Comfort girl was a term that was used back in like World War II, right? The idea that women would provide comfort to soldiers who were about to go off to war, right? That it was their patriotic duty to do that for these men. That was a very common like term back at the time. Women are much more commonly in this profession than men, but of course men can be as well. For men, some of the same terms, but some different ones. We have escorts and call boys. Hustlers and gigolos, though, two other like very common terms for male prostitutes. A gigolo might be someone who's hired to have sexual relationships with women and receive support from her, right? So they might kind of be receiving money and financial support, and then they return the favor with like sexual services. Or a hustler would be someone who provides sex services to other men specifically, right? So less common that men engage in this, but it's definitely something that is out there, right? Again, not as common, but definitely out there. Yeah.
Is a gigolo basically having like a sugar mommy? Okay.
Yeah, and that would be like a common like description of what's happening there, right? And so you're repaying that with sexual favors, right? Or maybe even just like taking them out and escorting them, right? It's a very specific, interesting type of relationship, right? For sure. That's exactly what it is. Again, we talked about this, why people might become sex workers. The number one reason is money, right? People feeling like they have no other option. And so this is how they're going to earn an income. This is how they're going to, earn money. It comes at a very high cost though, right? Because prostitution is not legal in the vast majority of the United States. There's no protection for people who identify as a sex worker. So if somebody rapes you, assaults you, like harms you in some way, you can't do anything about it. If you go to file a report, right, you could be arrested for the services that you were providing that led to that, right? And so there's a lot of cost, right? Not only that, but also in terms of like acquiring STIs, very, very common, very high rates of that, high rates of like abuse and violence. There's not a lot of protection for being in this line of work because it is illegal, right? So you can't go to the police and file a complaint without also getting in trouble yourself. Yeah.
The guy would get in trouble though.
Yeah. So it might be both parties getting into trouble, right? So one would get in trouble for providing the services and the other for the acts that they did. And there's a lot of entrapment with this as well, right? Of like undercover cops like going out and soliciting this way. Yeah.
She was into a hotel. What if she goes, she's like, she doesn't want to say what she was doing,
Yeah.
and I shouldn't tell the police because this guy,
Mhm.
she'll get in trouble.
Yeah, and it's a tricky area because you should still have rights as a
Yeah.
person and not have to deal with that, but because you were committing a crime yourself, it makes it a little messier, a little blurrier. As I mentioned earlier, like this is something that is largely illegal, right? So the only places in the United States where prostitution is legal are 8 rural counties in Nevada. Okay, not Vegas. So just outside of the limits of Vegas, prostitution is legal in 8 small counties in Nevada. Now, it was legal for a long time and they've held on to that. It used to be legal in Rhode Island to have brothels, but they got rid of that about 2-3 years ago. That was like one other little pocket. But other than this, it is illegal everywhere else in the United States. So that creates some interesting like things in the Vegas area where vans and things will drive down the strip offering escort services. And what they do is they take you outside of that county where it is legal. So it's a little tricky. Yeah.
So it's like the biggest reason it's illegal because it's not something that can be regulated.
It's difficult to regulate, right? And I think there's a lot of hesitancy to encourage that kind of behavior, but there's a lot of talk of legalizing it. So marijuana was like a huge thing in the last like 10 years that has been legalized in a lot of places. And this is another one that's had a lot of discussion because if we legalize it, then we protect people who are doing it, right? They can then have protection. We can also require STI testing so that there's less STIs acquired and spread, and have people like registered in a database. So this is something that like potentially could be legal in some ways in the future. It also would create a huge revenue source because you could tax, you'd have to declare it, and you could make money from that as well, which was a big reason why marijuana was legalized. Huge moneymaker for the government and so, right.
But it's just also to me, I think it's a little unconstitutional to tell people what they can and can't do with their
Sure.
bodies,
Yeah.
you know?
And a lot of people argue that, right? Like if this is what I want to do and I'm good at this and I'm taking care of myself in my own way, like why can't I? Right. And so that's a big argument as to why we should legalize it. And if we did, people who practice this would be protected and they would again be registered and like and tested regularly. We have this other kind of weird gray area where it's not legal, but it's not illegal. Right. So like you're not going to get in trouble for it, but you're not protected. And that's kind of marijuana went through that as well. Right. Of like, well, we want to arrest you, but it's not legal, but it's not illegal. So there's some alternatives that are being discussed, but it's still illegal almost everywhere in the United States. Yeah.
Sex workers union.
Yeah, they would have to have one, right? And so the idea again would be protection and rights, right? And that would be a huge advantage of legalizing this, and it would give people the opportunity who wanted to do this, because this is happening whether it's legal or not, right? This is happening everywhere, right? There's a lot of prostitution, even if it's not standing on a street corner, right? It's still happening. And so the idea is like, well, we can acknowledge that it's happening and protect people doing it, or we can ignore it and keep going where we're at. Yeah.
You know how a bunch of countries put like travel advisories telling their residents not to.
Mhm.
Part of Germany's travel advisory is that if you're a prostitute, don't go to the US to offer services because it's illegal.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
right.
think that's so.
Yeah,
I
wow.
tell people.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll talk about sex trafficking on the next slide, but when we were going on our cruise, there were travel advisories to not bring children to some of the places that we were going. Specifically Honduras, don't bring children there because of the sex trafficking. Luckily, we didn't get off the boat there, so I think somebody might have been looking for us, but yeah, I mean, the advisory, that's a wild one, right? Don't offer that in the United States because it's illegal. And interesting, I haven't been to Vegas in a while, like, because I have little kids. Well, we went a few years ago, but very different than pre-children going to Vegas. But if you go there, right, they're always handing out the little flyers on the street, right? Like they're always like slap them and they always hand them to me because they think I'm male. So they give them to me. I collect them and put them in my father-in-law's house. So last time we went, I collected maybe like 80 of them and I put them all throughout his house in his bed, which is so gross. Like I had to apologize for that one. But I put him just like, Crystal misses you, call Crystal, like, oh, look, collected them everywhere. This is very common in Nevada, right? Not within Vegas County, but just outside of it. So again, something that you might see more of in the news moving forward, you know, this is a conversation being had nationwide. Do we legalize or decriminalize prostitution? Because right now it's largely illegal and there are advantages and disadvantages to that. Was that a hand or yeah? What's up?
So in the county, it's legal, they have like protection against like things like that.
Yeah, it's more like decriminalized. It's kind of in that weird gray area where it's not monitored as much as it should be. Testing is encouraged but not required, right? And so legalizing it would add more protection, right?
Okay, so like this is the violence that they would. get.
Yeah, so they wouldn't get in trouble, but they like, so you could report it, but it could be that like neither party is enforced anyway. So it's a bizarre gray area in those 8 rural counties. And so even then, even those 8 counties have been up for like review multiple times. And I think it's because it goes back like hundreds of years that there was something that was like grandfathered in that like allowed those counties to keep it. We'll see what happens with that. It wouldn't surprise me if it either went all the way legal or like gone. Because it's strange that it's just those like tiny little pocket in Nevada, right? Odd. Yeah.
There was some idea involving decriminalizing it, where decriminalizing being a prostitute, but not hiring one.
Yeah, yeah. And that's another way that it can show up too, right? So it's not punished on either end, or it might be punished on one end, but not the other. It's decriminalization's tricky. Yeah. Yeah. So last thing, and this is kind of a scary one. I can tell you as a parent of 3 little girls, like this one scares me. But sex trafficking is something that has gained an incredible amount of like traction in our world, right? It's the most common form of modern day slavery, one of the fastest growing organized crimes, huge in other countries, especially like I said, when we were going on our cruise just like a month or 2 ago, the warnings for trafficking of children were really intense. Like it was like, be really careful with your kids in these other countries. And it's a danger here too. Like you hear about it constantly of children being kidnapped or going missing. It's very commonly children who are taken and then put into like a sex trafficking like industry. So the recruitment, transportation, transfer, or harboring by the means of threat or use of force of other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, or the abuse of power or position of vulnerability, right? It's somebody who is being exploited, oftentimes sexually, and we call that sex trafficking. Right. And as I said, this is gained a lot. This is sometimes called a debt bondage, right? It could also be that families are selling children into this industry, right? In order to pay off a debt that is owed. This is not as common in the United States, but it is common more in other countries. There's often force involved, drugs that are involved, financial coercion that's involved. This is something that is really scary. And as I said, has gained a lot of momentum worldwide over the last like 15 to 20 years. It's something that I hear more and more about. And again, I might be more aware of it because I have 3 little girls, but this is something that we see happening a lot, right? And it's kind of a more modern form, again, let's say a modern day slavery in a sense, where people are paying off either debt or they're just being sold or kidnapped against their will into this industry. So something to be very like aware of it and careful around. Definitely something that's growing, sadly. Yeah.
It's me back in 2019. Because I knew it was right before COVID. And in 2019, my sister was 3 years old, just like freshly 3 years old.
Yeah.
About to be. And my parents went to the Thousand Oaks Mall right here. And of course, my mom is she's like very protective. So she never lets go of our hands or anything, right? But she said that there's some man that was following them the whole time they were there. And at one point when they were in line for something, he got closer and tried to take my sister's hand and tried to take her away. And like my mom instantly was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But that just happened right here.
Yeah.
Thousand Oaks.
Yeah, there was a case at the Target in Simi Valley 8 years ago. There was a case of trafficking, and a child was abducted from the Target in Simi, right? So I mean, we tend to think of this as something far away. It's not always, right, which is terrifying. And what happens oftentimes, challenge you not to think of like the Taken movies, right? But what happens is like a child or like a young adult is taken from a place like here and then taken to another country where you will never find them, right? And that's the terrifying part of it. 3, yeah, that's disturbing on so many levels, right? Yeah.
It was this like grown woman. It was like definitely some recruiting stuff. It was a woman just like running up to my car in the drive-thru saying like, I need help lifting your car. And I'm like, I'm not leaving my car. I'm like, I'll call the police if you want.
Sure.
And I literally instantly ran away. And so like then she just kept going up to other people. And I guess like later on there was an alert that it was a sex trafficking scam. Like she was recruiting, like she was, trying to get people to help her, like, oh help me, and then taking some very weird stuff.
That's awful.
Yeah, just be careful. And like it really went against like your intuition and wanting to help people. Like that's the weirdest thing. Like of course I wanted to help her. I'm like, I'll call the police, like
Sure.
It's bad.
I have a line, right? I will help you and call the police, but you're not getting in my
Yeah, it's just so silly how the second I was like, I'll call the police. She just like everything was fine. She just like literally walked away like nothing was happening. Okay, well, I guess it wasn't that serious.
Right, and we have to be careful in general, right? There's a lot of things that we have to be careful of, and it's scary that if there are things right here, like whether it's scams to try and steal our money and our cards, or things like that to try and get access to like whoever is in your car or whatnot. You have to be careful. There's a lot of this, yeah.
If you feel like a baby crying into your private there.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought that might be a ploy of some kind, right? Yeah. There was another thing in Northridge. This was like 6 years ago. It was right around the holidays that people were marking cars. Like cars were do you remember that? Like, I forget, they were putting something on a car, and if your car was marked, then they like were waiting for you to come out to abduct you, or like there's so much of this stuff, right? That, just be careful in general, right? You be always aware of your surroundings. It's much more common with children. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen with other people too. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Paper or something, you don't need to.
Lace with somebody.
Yeah, when you're a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary, right? I've seen those as well. Like you get these videos of things like that on TikTok, and I always hope that they're not real, but it's always better to be careful than not careful.
So there was this Brazilian television show, called Veronica,
Okay.
where, it centers around a cop named Veronica, but there's this whole story involving the guy that is, he's a serial killer, and he uses his wife
Yeah.
to get victims.
Sure.
Like he has this wife that he like abuses her, controls her, because she's a very docile person. And he has her go up to women getting off a bus and says that, and offers them work. Because they're coming in from like elsewhere where they might be looking for like under the table work.
Yeah.
So she walks up to them and offers them a job. And she's like, oh, I can take you to my car and me and my husband and we'll offer you house cleaning service and we'll do house cleaning services. And like this girl's like, oh, okay, yeah. She doesn't know. And then, well, you know, the guy chases her, puts her in a taxi, you know, murders her, you know. But like, I thought that scam was really an interesting portrayal. And like later in the series, Veronica, the main character, walks up to a girl coming off of the same bus because she knows that's a tactic they use. And then she says, come with me and my husband have work we can do for you. And then she's like, okay. And then she says, see, if you would come with me and I was not a cop, then you would have been dead. Be very careful.
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. It's scary. I mean, the tactics are all over the place. They're scary. So just again, be careful. Yeah. Yeah.
The speed was a little less, but then my woman was just like, wait, what if this is like a sex trafficking thing?
Yeah.
They put like a numbing thing.
Right. Yeah.
I wondered.
Scary, right? That you even have to learn, right? Like it's terrifying. Like a couple of you have mentioned, there's some really scary things that people do. There's scary tactics out there, right? Yeah. So if things are left randomly on your car, like be questionable about it, right? Like be critical of it and think about it. Be careful. Because this is something like it's not far away. It's here, and that's scary. Definitely scary. Now, I have a couple of reminders for you before we're done. I hate that this is our last class. Like I said this to my last class. I'm just not going to let you leave. We'll just stand here and stare at each other. Can you imagine? That'd be really awkward. I'm always tempted. So a couple of things before we're done today. So this is the last day that we're all meeting. Right, so on Wednesday is our final, and the final is on Canvas. There's a study guide. It's the same style and format as you've taken all semester. Make sure that you complete it by Wednesday night, right? Also make sure you're double checking your grade, as I've told you a couple of times. Make sure you let me know if anything is incorrect. You also have that clothing assignment that is due by Wednesday night on Canvas as well. So between these two things, it's a lot of points. I know that we're close to the end, and I know everyone's worn out and tired and stressed, but don't blow these two things off. That will really hurt your score. So make sure you spend some time studying, do well on the exam. Don't forget the closing assignment. It is worth 25 points. And as I mentioned, please do double check your grades on Canvas just in case. So on Wednesday, I will be here. Okay, but there won't be class. So if you need to come find me, I will be here in my office. I'll also be here throughout. Give me like 2 more minutes. I will be here during finals week as well. So if you would like to come meet with me or talk with me at any point, send me an email. We can figure out a time to do that because I will be here. And I really have enjoyed this class. I didn't get to teach this class in person because of COVID for like the last 2 to 3 years. And it's been so nice to be back teaching this. It's so much more fun to teach this class in person than it is online. I feel like I have to be careful online and I don't have to be careful as much in here, or careful in a different way. So I really have loved that we've gotten to have this class together, and I'm super grateful for it. Yeah.
I was still my grade, and I should have an A+++ because I'm so cool.
Okay. All right. Well, let me know if you see something that's wrong, right? But let me know. But thank you all. I hope that you all have a great summer. Good luck on your finals. Oh, and before I forget, I had offered that extra credit earlier in the semester with the self-care. There's 4 of you that I was hoping I could use your images that you submitted. So Sharon, Tyler, Rebecca, and Ileana, if any of you are here, could you just come check in with me really quick? I have a little form, like if you're willing to fill out. Otherwise, I am here if you ever want to come say hi and get candy from me. I always have candy If you're graduating, congratulations and good luck at your next school. But I will be here in the fall. If any of you are still around, come find me and say hi. Have a wonderful summer. Get out. No, I'm just kidding. Sad, I hate it, right? But have a wonderful summer. I forgot to hand it over. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Let's just. So what I can do is, if you want to call. Yeah, I'll be down there in a couple.
You guys.
What's up? Oh, yeah. Thank you. So I was hoping, if it's okay with you. That I can see the side one, because to fill out, it's just like a permission. So if it's-
I'm not sure what's south of I think this.
Oh, okay. So let's see.
And I'm not sure, because I think it's the access port.
Yeah, so I'll thank you. And then,
I'm not sure if this is where. And so we invite your.
I'm not put it, and then if you find that like we didn't do it right.
Yeah. And like, and then, I was like talking to like my friend about it, like, what was it? And then when she on campus on Wednesday.
I should, yeah, if you want to, email me. we can
Okay.
figure out a time if you want to.
That's hours.
Wednesday, it starts to be weird because of like finals and stuff, so send me an email and I can write you back and let you know, that way, I don't want to give you the wrong time.
Yeah.
Attendance, I forgot to handle, so don't worry about it, where everyone was here.
So yeah.
They sent me, oh, I can't open it into my computer.
Okay.
Or
Or if
he
you
has
want, I
Microsoft.
have one other student who said she couldn't open it either. If you want to meet me downstairs in a minute, I can give you the hard copy.
Oh, yeah.
And you can just take a picture and send that, or just type your thoughts into
Oh,
me.
yeah.
I'll be down there in just a minute if you want to meet me downstairs. Yeah,